Wait, Dr. Callum! Do not sign that chart yet. Look at the dosage. This is a lethal amount.
The order had already been written. Dr. Callum had written it at 11:43 p.m. in the clean, practiced handwriting of a man who had written 10,000 orders before it. And the nurse had read it back to him, and he had confirmed it, and the medication was already being drawn up at the station 17 feet from room 6 when Mara came through the door with her mop bucket. She was not supposed to be in room 6. The room was occupied. A 7-year-old girl named Lily, admitted 4 hours earlier with a fever of 104.2, vomiting, neck stiffness, and a rash on her torso that the triage notes described as non-specific. Mara cleaned occupied rooms only when specifically requested or when a spill required immediate attention. There had been no spill. She had come because the door was ajar, and she had seen, from the hallway, the particular stillness of a child who was not sleeping, but somewhere further away than sleep. And something in that stillness had pulled her through the door before she had consciously decided to enter. She stood inside the door with her mop and looked at Lily for 11 seconds. Then she looked at the whiteboard on the wall where the attending's orders were written in blue marker. She read the medication. She read the dosage. She read the indication, presumed viral encephalitis, written in Dr. Callum's careful hand. She stood completely still for 3 more seconds. Then she set down her mop. Before we continue, if you believe that what a person knows cannot be taken from them, no matter what the system takes away, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. Her name was Mara Ionescu, and she had been a pediatric surgeon for 14 years in Bucharest before she came to this country with her husband and her daughter and a folder of credentials that the licensing board had examined for 8 months and ultimately declined to recognize without a residency program she could not afford to complete, and a husband who was sick by then, and a daughter who needed school fees, and a landlord who needed rent. She had applied to 3 residency programs. She had been waitlisted twice and rejected once. She had taken the cleaning position at Mercy General because Mercy General was a hospital, and being inside a hospital was the closest she could get to the only thing she had ever been good at. And she had told herself it was temporary, and 11 years had passed. She read clinical journals on her breaks. She attended grand rounds when the department heads forgot to close the auditorium doors, standing in the back of the room where she would not be noticed, listening to case presentations and forming her own differential diagnoses in the margin of a small notebook she kept in her cart. She had been right in the margin of that notebook more times than she had been wrong. She had never told anyone. There was no one to tell. She knew what she was looking at in room 6. The rash was not nonspecific. It was petechial, pinpoint, non-blanching, distributed across the trunk and beginning to appear at the collarbone. She could see it from where she stood. The neck stiffness, the fever, the altered consciousness, the rash, they formed a pattern she had seen 6 times in her surgical career, twice as a resident, 4 times as an attending, and every single one of those 6 times had required the same thing: immediate, high-dose 1,5 antibiotics, not the antiviral that was currently being drawn up 17 feet away in the medication station. Bacterial meningitis, not viral encephalitis. The distinction was the difference between a medication that would help and a medication that would do nothing while the bacteria continued their work. And Lily had, Mara calculated quickly, the way she had always calculated, the way 11 years of mopping floors had not touched, perhaps 40 minutes before the window closed. She walked into the corridor. Dr. Callum was at the nursing station, his back to her, reviewing another chart. He had been on shift since 4 in the morning. It was 11:47 at night. She could see the exhaustion in the set of his shoulders from 6 feet away, the particular collapse of a body that has been running on will for the last 4 hours. She said, "Doctor?" He did not turn around immediately. The cleaning staff did not typically address the attending physicians directly. There was no policy against it. It simply did not happen. She said it again. "Doctor, room 6. He turned. He looked at her, the blue uniform, the cleaning cap, the yellow mop bucket she was still holding in her left hand. His expression was not unkind. It was the expression of a man whose processing capacity was at its limit, being presented with an unexpected input. He said, "Is there a problem with the room?" She said, "The child has a petechial rash." He was still for 1 second. She said, "Non-blanching." It was not in the triage notes. It is on her collarbone now. It was not there an hour ago. He looked at her for a moment that lasted longer than it should have. She held his gaze with the steady, dark eyes of a woman who had stood in operating theaters and held a position and known she was right and not moved. She said, "Please look at her before the medication is given." She said 4 words after that, quietly, that she had not planned to say, that came from somewhere beneath the 11 years and the denied license and the mopping and the journal articles read on a plastic chair in a break room at 2 in the morning. She said, "I am a physician." He looked at her for another second. Then he turned and walked to room 6. She did not follow him. She stood at the nursing station with her mop bucket and waited. She heard him call for Dr. Reyes. She heard the medication orders stopped, not canceled, held, which was the word they used when the situation was still being assessed. She heard the specific sound of a hospital room reconfiguring itself around a new understanding of what was happening inside it. She stood and waited. The corridor was empty except for a night nurse moving between rooms at the far end. The fluorescent lights ran their steady, indifferent hum. Dr. Callum came back out of room 6 in 4 minutes. He looked at Mara with an expression she recognized. She had worn it herself twice in her career, both times as a resident. The expression of someone who has just understood how close something came. He said, "How did you see that from the door?" She said, "I was trained to see it." He said, "Where?" She told him. She gave it to him plainly. Bucharest. 14 years of practice. 6 confirmed cases of bacterial meningitis in pediatric patients. The licensing situation. The 11 years. She gave it to him the way she gave everything, directly, without apology or performance. The way you give a person information they need and allow them to do what they will with it. He was quiet for a long time. He said, "Lily is going to be all right." She said, "I know." He said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer it honestly." She waited. He said, "How often do you see things?" She understood the question. She had been understanding that question for 11 years. Every time she passed a room and looked through a doorway and formed a differential and wrote it in the margin of her notebook and kept walking. She said, "Often enough." Dr. Reyes found Mara in the break room at 1 in the morning, sitting with her clinical manual and a cup of tea that had gone cold. She sat down across from her without asking permission, which Mara appreciated. She said, "Callum told me what happened." Mara said, "The child is being treated." Dr. Reyes said, "Yes, she is. And I want to ask you something that is going to sound..." She paused. She started again. "I trained at a program that has a pathway for internationally licensed physicians. It is not fast. It is not easy. It requires 3 years, and it requires you to pass 2 examinations, and it requires someone to sponsor your application." Mara looked at her. Dr. Reyes said, "I am the program director." The room was very quiet. The fluorescent light ran its steady hum. Somewhere down the corridor, a monitor beeped its regular signal. Mara said, "I have a daughter. She is 17. I cannot leave my position here for 3 years." Dr. Reyes said, "The pathway is designed for practicing professionals. You would not leave your position. You would add to it." Mara was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her cold tea. She looked at the clinical manual open on the table in front of her, 7th edition, Pediatric Critical Care, the chapter on meningococcal disease flagged with a yellow sticky note. She said, "Why are you doing this?" Dr. Reyes said, "Because Lily is going to wake up tomorrow morning because of what you know, and the child after Lily deserves the same chance." She looked at the table. Dr. Reyes said, and because 11 years is long enough. Mara did not cry. She was not a woman who cried easily. She had not cried when the licensing board sent its final letter, or when her husband's treatment ended, or on any of the 11 years of mornings she had put on the pale blue uniform and gone back to the building where she was allowed to clean, but not to heal. She had learned to carry those things in the part of herself that did not require expression. She sat in the break room at 1 in the morning with her cold tea and her open manual, and she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Tell me about the examination requirements." Lily was discharged 8 days later. Her mother brought a card to the nursing station addressed to the night staff, a hand-drawn card that Lily had made herself, purple crayon on folded white paper, that said, "Thank you," in large, uneven letters, with a drawing of a hospital that looked more like a house and a drawing of a doctor that looked more like a star. The charge nurse posted it on the break room bulletin board. Mara saw it every morning when she came in. She did not tell anyone what she knew about that card. She simply looked at it and went to get her cart. She sat her first licensing examination 14 months later. She passed. She sat the second 6 months after that. The morning she received her results, she was in the break room before her shift, and she read the email on her phone, and she sat very still for a while. Then she finished her tea. She went to get her cart. She had 3 floors to cover before the day staff arrived. The cart's broken wheel still listed slightly to the left. She had been meaning to get it fixed for 2 years. She pushed it down the corridor and thought that perhaps, now, she would. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human decisions that turn out to matter more than anyone knew. And tell us in the comments, has someone ever surprised you with what they were carrying inside?